Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go! Well, Rob, there was glad to talk to you in this forum. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join me. I used to join you on your podcast back in the Leader Post days, so turnabout is fair play.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, and so this is Rough Rider historian Rob Vanstone, formerly of the Leader Post. Rob, I was, I know you're shocked. I was in the middle of it this week on social media with Luke Wilson defending the CFL, and I will always be a 3-down defender. I'm not dragging you into this, except to ask you, why do you love the 3-down game? Why do you love the CFL? Not just the CFL, 3-down football, because you've covered it right from the smallest guys all the way up to the pros now.
Well, I grew up in the 70s, and I was introduced to football by my mom. And as far back as I can remember, Ronnie was quarterbacking, and it was said so often, as long as there's time on the clock, ... And as long as Ronnie had any shot, you always felt like the Riders had a chance. And I think that was just a kind of a microcosm almost of the nature of Canadian football. Mm-hmm. And there is always that chance. And we saw it on Friday where a game can flip so quickly from touchdown and 2-point conversion to touchdown the other way. I love the way it can turn, and sometimes it breaks your heart. But I think that the nature of the CFL game just breeds that affinity, and once you get it in your blood, you can't really. It's incurable, and that's a good thing. I remember the '89 Grey Cup, and the Hamilton Tiger Cats were still celebrating a Derek McAdoo touchdown when Ken Austin hit Jeff Fairholm for a 75-yard bomb. And so there was almost a merger of the celebration where the Tiger Cats fans were still applauding at the same time the Rider fans started applauding when Jeff Fairholm took off for the end zone. Mm-hmm. That's Canadian football. And, growing up here, I think it's by birthright. But I think had I been exposed to it in any market at any time, I think I would have loved it. And it's been near and dear to me for well over 50 years now. And I mean, I've used this line too many times, but I went to my first Rider game in 1963. I was born in 1964. My very pregnant mother took me to Rider games in 63.
Yeah. Hey, so how do we get young Rob Vanstone turned on to the game? Listen, actually, that's not the question I want to ask you, because you're a CFL employee, so I don't want to go into that too much, because I know you got things you can talk about, you can't talk about. Here's how I'll pose it. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with the 3-down game as it is. I don't, can you look at modifying some things, like they always tweak, they have the rules committee meetings? Sure. Were there too many penalties in that game? Sure. Sometimes does it get over-officiated? Sure. But that's not just a CFL problem. That's in any sport, in any league, in any form of football. You see it in the NFL, okay? I can list you all the games that I've seen NFL screw-ups. The Ed Hockley pass that was ruled, or fumble that was ruled a pass, Broncos beat my Chargers, the Fail Mary, the lights going out at the Super Bowl, the referee making the coin toss screw up between Detroit and Pittsburgh. There's things in both leagues. But is there anything about our game, if you were commissioner for a day, is there anything you would change about the actual game on the field?
I've been thinking and I really wouldn't mess with it. I think the game has always been its foundation and its strength, and and I know you're a champion of football at all levels, and I go to a high school game, a Regina Minor football game, a junior game, a university game, and the fact that it's Canadian football really is a compelling thing to me, and you wonder what you're going to see. Mm-hmm. And there's that element of unpredictability, and there's that there's just so many facets to it that I think make it compelling regardless of the level of football. I mean, I could go on and on about some. I'll still believe that the the 1993 Schwann Conference final between the Tom Trojans and Riffle Royals was one of the best football games I've ever seen. There's some of those Rams games during the year they got to the Vanier Cup. It was just classic after classic on that trail in the playoffs. Chris Warnicki that season recovered an onside kick and took it for a touchdown for a last-minute victory. There's always that element of unpredictability, and we saw that this past Friday. I think a lot of the things that the CFL, from Stuart Johnston to the team governors on down, are espousing now is trying to foster that kind of link between young people in the game that existed and flourished when centuries ago when I was young. And Stuart Johnston has said many times since taking over as the commissioner that we're competing for attention, and he's looking at it. He says everything should be looked at from through the lens of entertainment, and I think that's just such a valuable message, especially when he talks about the demographics, the need to attract younger audiences. As much as I love the game, I'm not the target demographic. I probably haven't been for a decade now, if not more. I might be flattering myself to say just a decade. Yeah. So how do you get the younger fans to be as invested as I was once upon a time, when there's so many more influences out there. I mean, football or anything is not only competing with other sports, but with a phone. It's all about trying to get people to invest some of their time in you, and there's more and more things coming at you from more directions. Yeah, every day it seems.
So you used to cover this league and this Rough Rider team from the other side. Now you're in the building. I wonder, how much do you relish that you get to spend? You probably get to spend more time than you did before. Like before, you might critique. I don't know, let's pick a guy. You might critique a Mario Alford for his lack of production over a stretch of games from a columnist standpoint. Now you get to kind of talk about Super Mario and look at his background as a farmer, West Virginia, and all that type of stuff. How much do you relish that kind of aspect of your job now?
I love it. I mean, it's a different job in some ways. I mean, it's more of a storytelling aspect, and whereas before, I mean, there was plenty of storytelling at the Leader Post, but one of my job descriptions was columnist, and that's very opinion-based. But the rudiments aren't much different. I've got a MacBook on my lap, and I've got some interviews at my disposal, and I've got a bunch of nerdy historical files that I've kept. And how do I kind of meld all that together? The challenging part sometimes is that Mosaic Stadium is very distracting. I love sitting in the alumni lounge and typing, but every now and then I find myself transfixed by 33,000 seats in front of me and looking right at this massive scoreboard. And it's just like, I remember when the scoreboard was at Taylor Field, it had a cigarette ad on top of it.
And a couple of burned out light bulbs.
And most of the players smoke that brand. And,
on the field during the game.
So I mean, it has changed so much, and but sometimes I find myself being almost like a tourist, and I just sit there and look at it. There have been times I've sat on a chair with my back to the field so I can write, because if I just sit there and look ahead, I'm just gonna marvel at the stadium, and the cursor is gonna keep flashing on my screen. And there's nothing on it. At some point, I got to get to work as opposed to looking at this postcard in front of me.
Yeah. Hey, looking at a guy, I like redemption stories, and I'm not going to sit here and say I wasn't critical of the guy, because when they signed A.J. Ouellette, I'm like, well, that's a pretty big price tag, and he didn't dress for a lot, as many games as obviously the Riders would have liked, and for sure A.J. would have liked. And I'm like, okay. Then he starts this year, and he goes out in the first quarter, and he's in the 10th, and then he doesn't come out, and it's like, okay, business open, business closed. What a waste of money. And then all of a sudden, you bring in a 1,000-yard rusher like Kadeem Carey, and A.J. Ouellette's picking him up and putting him down. So it looks like he's on a bit of an A.J. Ouellette redemption tour. He looks leaner and quicker this year, like he's playing that way. Kind of a different A.J. Ouellette.
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, if you look at his rushing yardage last year, prorated over a full 18 games, it would have been about 1,200 yards. So the production when he was in the lineup, I think, was what one would come to expect.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, he had 3 touchdown runs over 2 games. There was that huge 30-yard touchdown run in the West semifinal against BC. And but I think that really whetted the appetite for what if AJ is healthy from day one, which he wasn't last year. And then so I think the fact that he's healthier combined with the fact that he's leaner, he's still that very punishing runner, as you can see by that stiff arm.
Yep. Yeah.
He's still just a really intimidating runner, but he's also, able to run away from people if need be. And then you see, Trevion Tate 15 yards downfield, flattening somebody to clear, I think, the final path last week against Toronto. So you've also got a receiving corridor and a group of offensive linemen that really relishes it. So once you combine all that, I think AJ is kind of emblematic of the identity that offense wants to have. And the offensive lineman, I mean, you know it from all your years in football. You tell an offensive lineman that there's going to be some run blocking and they start salivating. It's just, it's a different mentality than pass protection. And they just absolutely love it. And then that running game sets up so much with play action.
So I don't know, I think BC will bring a different challenge up front for the offensive line for the Rough Riders. Ottawa, nothing on their defenses looks spectacular, although they had a decent game against Calgary, maybe helped out a bit by the weather. Hamilton, I don't know about their defense, especially up front. And Toronto has some injuries, so it might be the caliber of opponent, but I don't want to diminish what the Riders are doing on the offensive line. The O-line is the heartbeat of any football team. It really is. You don't really notice the heart till you start having problems with the heart, and then all of a sudden the heart becomes very important. I think you have to give kudos to that offensive line. I was really hesitant to see how this season would. I had the Riders for first in the West, believe it or not, at the start of the year, but then the injuries in training camp, I'm like, I don't know about that. But they have overcome them to this point. I know still we got a long way to go, but just your thoughts on the O-line so far.
Well, I think Edwin Harrison, as much as he's reluctant to hear this kind of description, because I was teasing him about it the other day. Corey Mace keeps calling him Coach of the Year. So as Edwin walked by the other day, I referred to him as Coach of the Year. He's like, no. And but I mean, what he does with that offensive line is just amazing. And when you consider that for the entirety of his tenure as the offensive line coach here, dating back to 2024, there's been a first-year CFLer playing left tackle for the most part. It was Trevor Reed all of last year, started the season this year with Peyton Collins, who did terrifically, and then he hurt a knee in the third quarter of the season opener. In comes Daniel Johnson. So you've had in the first game a raw rookie, second game someone who was on the practice roster last year and had not dressed for a game until this year, playing the all-important left tackle position. I mean, honestly. And so that's a testament to those players, but also to the flexibility of, okay, Logan Ferland, you're playing center again. Trevion Tate, you were left tackle last year primarily. Now you're playing guard. Jacob Brammer can play tackle. Now he's a guard. I mean, honestly, the versatility that those players demonstrate, where there's, I think, different skill sets and different body types in many cases required or preferred for guard and tackle. It really is something. Only 2 sacks allowed over 3 games, and that's only happened once in Rider history. The last precedent was, I think you were with the Rams in Ballsy, 1992?
Yeah. That was a long time ago, buddy.
Tell me about it.
hey. I want to get to a Rams comment in a second about Frank McChrystal, because you covered him too. But just a thought too. I'd said in the offseason, listen, Trevor Harris is an all-star quarterback in 11 games, but you need 2 quarterbacks to win. Now, I don't know if he'll play this week against BC or not. As we talk, he's missed 2 practices in a row, concussion or illness or a combination of both, however you want to look at it. But Jake Mayer comes in, and some people didn't like that signing. I like Jake Mayer as a quarterback. I thought, you know what? He played in Calgary 2 years ago, but with I think even a lesser team last year, he had better stats. So I like that signing by the Riders. Your thoughts on the insurance policy that is Jake Mayer, and also I listen, I thought for a long time that third string quarterback is a waste of money. Like, why are we wasting our money on mannequins on the sidelines? You know what I mean? Like, come on. But Tommy Stevens is a weapon. Like, that guy, I don't think he's ever been stopped. And I still have nightmares calling games when I saw him with the Stamps run for 2 long touchdowns against the Riders out of a short yardage situation. So I think 2 good signings for the Riders there that might pay dividends as we go down the line here.
Yeah, he's almost, he's such a weapon. I mean, very seldom do you think, okay, it's 3rd and 1 or 2nd and 2 or whatever. You're thinking generally within the parameters of a yard or 2. Mm-hmm. Now you're thinking, is he going to bust it?
Yeah.
I don't recall anybody like that in franchise history. There have been quarterbacks who have presented a running threat, but not necessarily within with that kind of job description. I mean, we saw what Kerry Joseph was able to do. Nealon Green was so effective. Hank was a good runner. Ron Lancaster once ran for a 48-yard touchdown.
Wow.
So,
did they time that with a sundial or what?
I came across that one and said, oh my goodness, I got to find footage of that.
Wow.
And that was in the late 60s. And so, there have been quarterbacks who have had that dimension. But, I mean, Tommy Stevens is 6'4", 245, and he tells me he's the smallest kid. All his brothers are bigger.
Wow.
But he's basically 6'4", 245 in many cases is a defensive end. Mm-hmm. So you've got a defensive end, stature-wise, playing quarterback. And once that train gets rolling, you just wonder what the final destination is. So we saw, I think, a taste of it with a 19-yard run against Toronto last week.
Yeah.
You keep wondering when there's going to be that 70-yarder here because he's done that repeatedly.
And Jake signed the Prove It contract here with the Rough Riders as the backup, so he might get a chance to prove it here, which I know every alpha dog quarterback or athlete wants to do that. So if he does get the chance here on Saturday, I'm interested to see what he can do. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, there were 4 quarterbacks in the CFL who threw 20 touchdown passes, and the Riders have 2 of them. Jake Mayer threw 22. The last game of the season, when Calgary was here, he threw 3 and just threw some beautiful passes. And even when he was in Calgary, I've always been one who's just enjoyed watching the ball in flight when someone can really sling it. And I remember this is when I was still with the Leader Post, and Thomas Udick was part of the Rough Rider Communications Department. He sat next to me in the press box, and we would sit there oohing and awing over some of the Jake Mayer passes, just as we were over the Nathan Rourke passes. We just enjoyed, regardless of who was throwing it, whether it was Rough Riders or the opponent, that ball's in the air. I think one of the things I like the most about live football is you see the whole spectrum of the field, and you see how difficult those throws can be, and you just have an appreciation for what the quarterbacks can do. TV doesn't quite give you that. And Jake Mayer was one of those quarterbacks that had me and Thomas just going, oh, did you see that? Mm-hmm. And so I'm intrigued if that opportunity arises for Jake Mayer, whether it's this week, down the road in whatever capacity. Is that going to elicit the same reaction now that he's wearing green? Yeah, so I read your stuff. You do a great job at the website there, the Riders website. I think you had said when Deshaun Mims dressed, it was now I could be wrong, it was the 17th Ram to dress in a Rider uniform since they joined from the university ranks, and was it 55th overall, or am I off with those numbers?
I've got to go find that now.
I think he was the 17th and 55th overall. If I'm not mistaken, that's how you wrote it. Anyway, the Rams, and you can correct me later, and I can edit this later. The Rams have been a big part of the Riders and vice versa, and one guy who's been in the middle of all that is Frank McChrystal going into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. You've covered Frank McChrystal. Just your thoughts on Frank getting what we both, I'm sure, agree is his just due going into the Canadian Hall.
Well, your recollection is better than mine. First off, Deshaun Mims was the 17th U of R Ram to play for the Rough Riders, and there have been 44.
44, okay.
44 who have tried out.
Okay, good. 44.
And then 17 have played. As far as the U of R or the Junior Rams, 126 were with the team in some capacity for some duration. 38 of them went on to play at least one CFL regular season or playoff game. Total games played of that group, a mere 2,367.
Wow, I love your nerdiness. I love your nerdiness, man. You when you do pass away, you have to have this so people can look at it somewhere. Like you do. Like, this can't be, your beautiful wife just can't shove it in a box and stick it under a crawl space somewhere. Like, it has to be at the Saskatchewan Sports Hall of Fame or something like that for people to check. I'm serious, man. You have to do Rider fans a favor and have a place where we can have like the Vanstone files or something. Serious.
It's fun to be able to do that, but I did tangentially stray away from your question regarding Frank McChrystal.
So Frank, go ahead.
I mean, the tentacles of Frank McChrystal and how many people have advanced in football and in life. You know, I mean, I'm talking to one of them, and how many dozens, if not hundreds, of them do you know? The wingspan of Frank McChrystal, Canadian Football League, players transitioned to Canada West football and U Sports football during his tenure.
NFL.
National Football League.
Yeah.
You talked to John Ryan the other day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, if you look at, 5 years as a player, 5 years as an assistant coach, and then 30 years as a head coach, that is absolutely remarkable. I don't think we'll ever see that again. As much as Gord Curry was identifiable with the Rams, and he certainly was and always will be, his tenure as the head coach was 1965 to 1976, and basically Frank was almost 3 times that duration.
And Gord,
absolutely
and Gord, who might be the greatest amateur sports coach in Regina history, Gord did not usher in a new era. Like, it wasn't all Frank, but Frank was the face of a new era, taking a junior team into the university ranks, which is no easy feat.
And that was a bold step for the entire Rams organization.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been very easy to stay in the Prairie Football Conference and continue to be dominant there. But I think they wanted to test themselves at a different level. And that meant taking some lumps. That meant a very rough introductory season to the Canada West ranks. You had to almost break the model, and that wasn't a matter of just saying, we want to go play university. I mean, there was so much that had to be done for that to happen, and there were some lumps that were taken as a result. But even before the Rams became a junior or university team, I mean, how many Rams players were able to go through the U of R and get a great education while part of that program? I mean, there was that affiliation, not officially, but there was certainly links many times over because so many of their players were going to college anyway. And so it made sense as well from that standpoint. But Frank McChrystal's an absolute giant, and I'm so glad to see that he is in there, and it's so fitting that he and Gord Curry are in there together. And I love the fact that it is the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. Sometimes it's erroneously referred to as the CFL Hall of Fame, but there's so many people who have been deservedly honored that don't have a direct connection to the Canadian Football League, but they're Canadian football icons.
I brought this up with John Ryan, and Ryan Hall and I talked about this on my Our Balls Are Bigger post-game show after the last Riders game. That's why I'm such a defender of the 3-down game. Not the CFL, but the 3-down game. Because the Canadian, and that's a symbol. It's the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. It's not the Canadian Football League Hall of Fame, because the CFL is not a standalone league. It is it's intertwined. Like, football's intertwined, the whole fabric of football, and it culminates in the CFL. But it's Canadiana, and that's why that is really the symbol of it. The Canadian Football Hall of Fame, not the CFL Hall of Fame.
I mean, Brian Towers. I mean, you just look at so many precedents. Don McDonald was so hugely involved in Saskatoon football. He's been enshrined. I mean, I could go on and on reciting a list of athletes, coaches, builders who weren't directly affiliated with the CFL, who were in the Canadian Football Hall of Fame, and I will always love that.
Okay, so give me a second here. Before he died, I had a great 3-hour lunch at his house with Jim Hopson. And I said, Jim, I want to do a Jim Hopson Athlete of the Year. And he said, I'd be honored. So I'm going to get a trophy and stuff, I said. And he signed a bunch of books for me, okay? So I'm going to give Jim Hopson books away. But it's not just going to be the Jim Hopson Amateur Athlete of the Year. I'm going to call it the Hobson Paczko Amateur Athlete of the Year. Here's like I primarily am an advocate for. I love all sports, but I'm primarily a football guy, so I'm an advocate for football. And you know me, I've coached RMF, coached flag, played it, done it, love it. Like I'm always, and not just because my kid's playing, I've done it for years. I'll stand on that. But I look up to a guy like you because you've covered all types of local sports, okay? So I really had a lot of admiration for you, still do. But Pete Paczko is a guy that if you need to know anything about local sports, and I pride myself on knowing a lot, I'd phone Pete up and say, can you help me out with the Riot or the Valkyries or Belfort basketball, or who do I talk to with badminton and everything? It's Pete Paczko. That's the guy. No disrespect to you, Rob, but that's the guy. But that's how I think we all kind of have a friendship. And I when I was doing the Rider games, I'm like, I need a great halftime host. So I'm going to have Pete Paczko, and I love him to interview Rob Vanstone. And I was actually just driving back from Calgary, taking my dad to an appointment, listening to an old game, and I came across a halftime show with you and Pete talking. And I put a smile to my face, but a little bit of tears too, because our buddy Pete Paczko, depending on how things, like I will tell you this without getting into it, Pete Paczko's life's going to end this week. His days are coming to an end this week. And so it's never easy to talk about, but just your recollection of, you know, your friend Pete Paczko and just some thoughts on Pete Paczko.
Well, it's interesting that you would mention the halftime huddle as part of the broadcast, because in 2022, after one of those segments, I just kind of in passing said to Pete, why don't we go for lunch? Mm-hmm. And so we started going for lunch regularly. I'd known Pete for a long time, but I didn't really get to know him well until we started going for lunch with that halftime segment being an impetus. And suddenly we were both taking our dogs, his Frank and my Candy, to lunch on an outdoor patio, and we just sit there forever and chat. And we bonded so quickly as friends. And one of the things that we really enjoyed talking about, because I think we could both zone in on it, was local sports. And but I just felt like a pretender talking to Pete about local sports, because he's a human Rolodex with regard to local sports, and he's given so many young athletes, so many sports, participating in so many sports for so long, a profile and attention, and allowed people to I think celebrate grassroots sports, and that was always one of my favorite things to do when I was at the leader post. I liked going to cover a fastball game on a Tuesday night. I didn't care how many people were there. I enjoyed going to cover a high school basketball game whenever. I loved a 1A provincial final in Hoopla, where basically populations of two small communities pack a gym and show everybody how to cheer on a sporting event. Not cheering against anybody, cheering for somebody. And I think that's so central to the fabric of local sports, grassroots sports, Saskatchewan sports. And Pete was an ambassador for that and a promoter of that throughout his time in covering amateur sports. And I mean, it's something he's talked about fondly in so many conversations. It just really resonated with him. And Pete's got so many friends that he's never met because of the profile that he's given to amateur sports. And my admiration for Pete could be stated within so many contexts. He's just a wonderful friend, and he's a wonderful friend to amateur sports, and someone I just think the world of. And
what I liked about Pete too,
Jake.
What I liked about Pete, and Jake's a great kid. They say a person never really dies until like you said, the ripples. Talked about Frank, till the ripples that they've created faded away. So with Jake there, those ripples will continue to go. And so Pete's never really gone. The other thing I liked about Pete is Pete's an Ontario guy. But Pete came to Regina and never left, and made Regina, really bought into it. He really made Regina his home, became a Rider fan. I got him into a Bombers hat, Rob. I'm not going to lie to you. I bought him a Bombers hat and got him into a Bombers hat before he went to palliative care. So I did get him in a Bombers hat. He reluctantly put it on for one picture.
Well, Pete told me that I referenced the 89 Grey Cup earlier, and he remembered watching the 89 Grey Cup on TV when he was living in London, Ontario.
Yeah.
And he said he remembered saying to himself at one point, if I ever live out there, I've got to cheer for that team. Well, 3 years later, he ended up moving to Saskatchewan to further his broadcasting career, became a Rider fan, starting in 2003, got a season ticket and maintained that. And one of the absolute joys of his life has been to go to Rider games with his son Jake and to share in Jake's entire football journey through RMF and through high school and through to the Thunder. And now he's a young, successful lawyer. I mean,
and a power lifter too.
My goodness.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
He could lift both of us. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Pete. Like you said, we could go on and on about Pete. And like I said, I want to do and with your help, maybe you can help me. We can put together. I'll do all the work, but you have to help me. Let's try to find some local athletes that we can honor the Hops and Paczko Award. There'll be two great guys who loved the community and gave back to the community, just like yourself, Rob. Do appreciate it, man. Are you out riding your bike, by the way? Are you out? Have you been out riding a bike or what?
Not as much as I should. I got out once, and I'm ashamed to say that it's late June, and I've only been out once. But I've been doing lots of dog walking, and
good.
With a bye week approaching, we're hoping to B.B. King once called his guitar Lucille. I call my bike Loose Wheel. And so I'm hoping to get Loose Wheel out next week and make up for some lost time.
And ride around with the Riders 4-0 is what you guys are hoping. Thanks for your time, Rob. I appreciate it, man. It's always great chatting with you.
Thanks so much for your time, Ballsy. Take care.